Good afternoon, everybody. This is another edition of the Pass Call Show, brought to you, of course, by JohnPLA.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. A couple different things we're going to get into today. This is going to be probably an abbreviated show, but I do want to let everybody know anything that's on your mind in the world of baseball, sports, and unifying America, please just let me know. And, obviously anything that we could, you want to contribute to the program, go for it. Anything that, you want to, react off of anything that I say, please do it. A couple of different things I'm going to touch on today. We're going to get into baseball, and eventually I'm going to propose a rule change. A rule change that I didn't really think that would have been that much of an issue, because you got to trust the governing bodies to kind of do things that they are doing when it comes to judging different events that happen in baseball, different incidents, and exactly how it is or what a standard penalty should be. But we'll touch on that in a little bit. But the first thing that I want to start out by talking about is because I got a little bit of a push from some people in my inner circle, and I always keep ideas open. And anytime that I hear in conversation, John, what's your take on this? I try to think about it. I'm like, is my take pretty standard? Is my take basically what other people say, or is it just kind of a repeat of what a lot of people have said already? And a lot of times I'll find that I have a little bit of a different take on it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, made some comments in a GQ article, and it was pretty critical over a couple different quarterbacks in the National Football League. And he made a couple points, and I'll tell you one point that I kind of agree with is, dude, if he thinks he is the elite shutdown corner in the National Football League, think about it. A couple generations have gone by. It wasn't always something to talk about. If you think of some of the best D-backs of all time, a guy like a Ronnie Lott or Rod Woodson, they didn't need to go out there and say it. Perhaps Deion Sanders and, kind of his prime time in a way that he kind of backed up his, the things that he said by his play was kind of the first indication of a defensive back kind of talking that, I guess, quote-unquote, smack. And, the way it's heard out, and obviously the main reaction that you hear is, hey, this guy's talking out of his you-know-what, and needs to maybe back up some of his comments with some performance, but at the very least, if he's not going to do that, then he should back up from some of his comments. Honestly, I don't have any issue with anything that Jalen Ramsey said. I think that he's a confident individual. He's obviously very talented. He probably is one of the elite shutdown corners in the National Football League, entering his third season. So he still, obviously, as the prime of his career, probably has a lot more time that's going to go by before the evaluation process is going to back up anything that he says or anything that he doesn't say. If he's humble, he chooses not to say anything, there's still the finished product, which is going to be many, many years away before we talk about where Jalen Ramsey ranks as one of the elite corners in the entire National Football League history. When you speak about the game now, he is certainly one of the up-and-coming top corners. You could say he's probably one of the best, but I'll tell you, one of the things that doesn't get spoken about a lot is if you are the best or you're going to be the best, you better believe that you're the best. And Jalen Ramsey believes that, pretty similar to any of our diva wide receivers that we've heard over the years, talking about how great they are and maybe being very quick to put down teammates and others that are, trying to work with them or working against them. And, the whole trash talk thing is it exists in the National Football League. But if you're going to be the best, you sure as hell better believe you're the best. And I say that about what I do. Very few people know about what I can bring to the table. And if I don't believe that I'm the best or I have the ability to hang on anybody else's level, then I don't belong in this business. I don't belong doing the little show that I have. And as my show grows and becomes more nationally known, I sure as hell better believe that I'm the best at what I do. And Jalen Ramsey isn't doing anything different by basically stating his position as what he believes, as he could shut down any wide receiver, he could read any quarterback, and he can make plays. And if he doesn't believe that, then you know what? I'm not going to say he doesn't belong on a field, but he certainly doesn't belong in the top cornerback discussion. He's got to believe it first, just like I got to believe this first. If I don't believe this, if I'm going to continue to say, hey, I'm a humble individual, and I appreciate everybody that's out there that's doing the same thing as me. If I'm going to take the humble route in radio broadcasting, then I probably ain't going to last. And I better believe that I'm good at what I do. I better believe that I perform at a high level. And Jalen Ramsey shouldn't think any different. So that's pretty much my take on that. Obviously, there's a big backlash. Oh, how could he, throw Eli Manning under the bus? And, he wasn't as critical. If you actually read the article, the GQ article that, was, first of all, put together many, many months ago, he's complimentary over some players, and he's not complimentary over some others. So, you're talking about a guy that's, 24, 25 years old? Pretty raw, probably in his head at the very least before anything else. So he's going to be spitting things that maybe 10 years from now he may not have want to say. And you know what? That's his decision. And anybody who makes mistakes in life knows that years later you go back and you say, hey, I wish I wouldn't have said that exact thing that I said, or I wish that I phrased it in a different way. So sure, there's a couple different things that Jalen Ramsey brings up in his GQ article that are controversial, and maybe at some point he may regret down the road. But what I get out of it is he's a confident individual. He's obviously a freaking talented player. He probably is the elite or one of the elite shutdown corners in the National Football League. Now he's put a target on himself. Pretty similar to what I've said, and it's not the first time that I've said that I am one of the elite in regards to talk radio and talk sports. I got to continue to back it up. Just like Jalen Ramsey is going to have a bullseye on his chest first week 1, playing the New York Giants and Eli Manning. Eli Manning may decide that he's going to throw at him. And Odell Beckham, I'm sure, is going to talk some trash before the game. It's obviously a pretty good matchup between one of the top receivers in the game and one of the top corners in the game. So it's going to get a lot of media attention. So what happens if Jalen Ramsey gets burnt for an 80-yard touchdown? Then he's going to have to answer that. He's going to look pretty silly based off of his comments. But obviously he's a talented player. But the most important thing I can say is he's got to believe that. Any cornerback in the National Football League that's going to be very humble and say, yeah, you know what, sometimes a receiver might beat me, but at other times I might beat them. That's got no place in the game. And you know what? That player that really believes that, whether he speaks it or not, is not going to get very far. He's not going to be the best. If you're going to be the best, you better believe that you're the best. And I don't care what it is that you're doing. If you believe in your heart that you're the best, there's nothing wrong with speaking it out every once in a while. Everybody's got skills. Everybody's got talent in something. Everybody has something that puts them over the top when it comes to different things in life. Sometimes it's your profession. Sometimes it's something that you're doing on the side. Sometimes it's just one quality that you have that people could come to you. Whether you have a psychological advantage of being able to give people advice. Whatever it is that you do well, you sure as hell better believe it. And I think there's room for being humble. Being humble is very good. There's certain times where it's better to show your humble side. But if you're working in a profession or in an environment where your best qualities are coming forward, yeah, show them. But there's nothing wrong with speaking them out. And Jalen Ramsey did nothing wrong there. Next thing I got to get into, because it's another thing that's been brought to my attention many times. Obviously, I saw it. I saw it live. I saw it while it was going on. So this wasn't like, hey, John, take a look at this. The Jose Urena, Ronald Acuna situation with the Marlins and the Braves. And I got mixed feelings on this. I really do. You hear some people like a Keith Hernandez talking about, a pitcher getting beat a couple times, you know what? Stick one in his ribs. I don't necessarily believe that wholeheartedly, though I believe there's a place for that in the game. And if you go back years upon years, baseball is a battle between a pitcher and a hitter. The pitcher and the hitter are not supposed to like each other. So as we've watched over the last 20 years, as baseball has changed and the camaraderie exists, you got best players on each team hugging before the game. The game has gone in a very soft way. And you could talk about the changes to the rules where base runners can't barrel into the catcher anymore. You can't have a collision at second base. You can't take out that middle infielder. Well, those decisions were made for players' safety. And I get that. But for those that want baseball to change and, outlaw hit batsmen, or to tell you in a heated moment a pitcher can't buzz somebody or can't throw a ball at somebody and hit him in the back, I don't necessarily agree with that. Now, I do have to say that Jose Urena looked like an idiot. He looked like an absolute fool the way he handled his business the other day. And it's not to say that the business that he handled was wrong or incorrect. As a pitcher, you have to own the inside part of the plate. Now, I think of the Yankees and Red Sox for many years when David Ortiz used to be able to dig his cleats into the dirt at home plate, get himself in the most comfortable position possible. And I tell you, I think of the Yankees pitchers that are just kind of throwing him the ball wherever he wants it. Now, obviously, Roger Clemens and Andy Pettit and those guys are trying to get David Ortiz out. But he felt ridiculously comfortable at the plate. And I tell you, the more years that went by that David Ortiz wasn't buzzed or plunked, he felt even more comfortable. And there's no coincidence that he had some of the best numbers of his career in competitive games against the New York Yankees. You look back at the days of Bob Gibson and Don Drysdale. And I will say this one point, which I haven't heard brought up too much. Don Drysdale and Bob Gibson, while they were very good pitchers, they controlled the inside part of the plate. Hitters felt uncomfortable against them. Don Drysdale and Bob Gibson sure led to a lot of bruises on forearms and backs because of the amount of batters that they hit. But they weren't throwing high 90s. They might have been hitting 95 at their very, most effective pitch. But pitchers in the game throw a lot harder. And I'm kind of dwindling back and forth like I'm a politician here. But I have mixed views on this issue. For a pitcher to throw their hardest fastball right at somebody's back, and I understand Acuna backed out of the way and ended up hitting his wrist. It's not like Jose Urena said, I'm going to go beating this guy in his wrist. But what he did basically say, and if his actions don't speak for this, there's nothing else that will, that he was going to throw his hardest fastball at Ronald Acuna with the intention of using the baseball as a weapon. Now, I don't have a problem with a pitcher owning the inside part of the plate. I don't have a problem with a pitcher making a hitter feel uncomfortable. You go back in the days of a guy like a Ryan Duran, and you think of Ryan Duran who pitched in the 50s and 60s with the Yankees, and he wore glasses. He didn't necessarily need glasses. He wore them as a prop. And he would take the ball sometimes for his first pitch and just whiz it to the backstop to kind of let the hitters know that, you know what, I don't know if I know where the ball's going. That's a way of control. That's a way of a pitcher trying to get a psychological advantage on the batter. Now, if you go back in baseball to the 19th century, the origins of baseball, when we used to talk about how batters used to basically let a pitcher know where they wanted a ball thrown to them, and the pitcher would generally throw a ball to where the hitter wanted. Obviously, the game changed because pitchers are getting compensated. Pitchers are saying, hey, if I'm getting paid to be out there, then I should, at the very least, be able to compete with the best of my stuff and do what I can to get this hitter out. And obviously, you saw a change before the turn of the century. And obviously, pitchers for many years have done what they could to try to get the batter out. But most importantly, if you're going to get a batter out, or if you're going to have an advantage in getting a batter out, you're going to need to control the inside part of the plate. And you've seen for the series of the last 10 to 15 years, where batters have gotten more and more comfortable in the batter's box and are looking at pitches middle in to drive, to pull, and are also looking for fastballs in the outside part of the plate to drive over the fence to right field. Assuming they're a right-hand batter. Obviously, if they're a left-hand batter, they're going to hit it to left field. The day of fantasy baseball, where think about it. If you got a fantasy baseball team, what are you looking for? You're looking for your batters to get base hits, to drive in runs, to score runs, to get extra base hits. Pitchers, sure, they benefit from striking a hitter out, but they sure as hell get hurt when batters on the other side are getting base hits, driving in runs, scoring runs, and getting extra base hits. So you look at the elite of elite pitchers in baseball, the top, the very top pitchers in baseball, the guys that are in a running for a Cy Young every year. Those pitchers strike out a lot of batters, but have sort of a mystique to them. They have sort of an advantage when they come to the mound. Hitters know that, hey, when Chris Sale is pitching, when Max Scherzer is pitching, when Clayton Kershaw is pitching, it's going to be a tough night for me. But the rest of the pitchers, the very good pitchers to the okay pitchers to the marginal pitchers to the lousy pitchers, have absolutely no advantage when a hitter comes to the plate. And I'll throw Jose Urena into the fairly average pitcher. He's a major league starter. If you polled, let's say, I don't know, all 30 teams in Major League Baseball, would he be a starter for every single one? Probably not. But he's a good enough starting pitcher to be in the Miami Marlins regular rotation. Now, he's best suited, obviously, for his team, for the fans that root for the Miami Marlins, when he's in the best position to get hitters out. And Ronald Acuna, over the better part of the last week or 2 weeks, has been on fire. He is a batter that pitchers have had a hard time getting out. And I don't condone taking your hardest fastball, the baseball that's in your hand, and using it as a weapon to potentially try to hurt Ronald Acuna. But Jose Urena, or any other pitcher in Major League Baseball that, number one, wants to hold on to their job, but number two, wants to beat the Atlanta Braves and hold Ronald Acuna at bay, should have a feeling that maybe, just maybe, they should try to make him feel uncomfortable at the plate. Now, there's a guy by the name of Sal Maglie who pitched a long time for the Giants and the Brooklyn Dodgers. His nickname was the Barber. And Sal Maglie didn't necessarily have the best stuff, but he had the nickname the Barber because of his ability to make hitters feel uncomfortable at the plate. Sure, if he grooves the fastball, there's a good chance you can hit it a long way. But that same fastball might be under your chin. It might be behind your back. It might shuffle your feet at the plate. And if you've seen a statistical advantage go towards hitters in Major League Baseball, it's because pitchers are not pitching inside. And pitchers need to start pitching inside. And I'm not asking hitters to get plunked and drilled and potentially hurt. I'm not asking pitchers to use a baseball as a weapon. But even if you go back to the days of Pedro Martinez, one of the things that made him the most effective was his ability to command his stuff. He could command his fastball, pretty much all his pitches. He had the ability in his prime, after his kind of learning days with the Dodgers and early on in Montreal, but he had the ability to put any one of his pitches wherever he wanted to. And that's what rubbed hitters the wrong way. That's what pissed off fans of opposing teams. Because when he buzzed the hitter, it wasn't a ball getting away from him, it was a purpose pitch. And Major League Baseball pitchers, really for the outside of the elite, and think about it, Chris Sale doesn't do it that often, Max Scherzer doesn't do it that often, Clayton Kershaw doesn't do it that often, but what they all do well is they pitch effectively inside. Now, the person that's on the other side of my argument is going to try to say, well, these pitchers, Sale, Scherzer, Kershaw, pitch effectively by not, hitting players in the back, not throwing balls, at people's heads. And I don't believe that pitchers should intentionally throw a baseball, especially as hard as they throw now, at a major league batter's head. But if every now and then a batter takes one in the back, if every now and then a batter is buzzed off the plate, sure, there's repercussions. If Ronald Acuna wanted to charge the mound and fight Jose Urena, he had every right to. And nobody was going to tell him that he didn't have the right to, pummel Jose Urena if he wanted to. And maybe if he wasn't hurt by getting hit in the wrist, maybe he would have charged him out. Now, the reaction from the Braves, listen, the Braves got every reason to be pissed off. Brian Snitker, I'm glad he did what he did. I'm glad he essentially charged Urena. I'm glad Eric Young, the first base coach, went after Urena. And you know what? More Braves should have done that. It should have probably been more of a brawl. You look back when Armando Benitez was pitching for the Baltimore Orioles, and he drills Tino Martinez in the back. Tino himself, he was upset. Sure, he was pissed off. He probably wanted to fight Armando Benitez. But what you liked the most about that altercation was Tino Martinez's teammates coming to his defense. Graham Lloyd and Jeff Nelson racing out from the bullpen to try to get to Benitez first. Darryl Strawberry clubbing him in the face in the dugout. Tino Martinez knew his team and his teammates were on his side. I don't know if he necessarily felt that with Ronald Acuna and his teammates with the Atlanta Braves. And sometimes it's time to get physical. Baseball is not a violent sport, and you can see by the rules changes for safety for players. You can't barrel into the catcher. You can't take out a runner at second base, a fielder at second base to break up a double play. The game has gotten soft, but the one thing that can't get soft is teammates protecting each other. And in that situation, I think there should have been more of a fight between the Braves and the Marlins. And I'm not asking the Marlins, who probably don't condone Urena's behavior, to go out there and defend him and start throwing punches. But I would expect more Braves to be in there trying to throw punches at Jose Urena. And unfortunately, there's going to be Marlins that are going to come to Urena's defense because he's on their team, and there's going to be a couple melees, a couple little fights going on over the course of this altercation. And I'm a little annoyed that I didn't see that. Not because I want to see violence, not because I'm condoning violence, not because I want to see two baseball teams fighting each other, but I don't think the Atlanta Braves came enough to Ronald Acuna's defense. This is a guy that's done nothing but hit home runs. He didn't do anything wrong. And from the Braves' perspective, they should have backed up the fact that they didn't understand why he was being targeted and hit. And the fact that Urena doesn't end up on the ground somewhere because somebody is trying to punch him, I have a little bit of a problem with that. The Atlanta Braves came off soft. Now, after the game, all the comments were towards Urena, a lack of respect for Jose Urena. The Atlanta Braves and other teams in Major League Baseball may no longer respect Jose Urena for what he did, but on the field, that should have been handled a little differently. And I would have expected to see a little more violence. I'm sorry. Once again, I'm not a person that condones violence. I'm not saying anybody's got to get hurt, but there had to be a player or two for the Atlanta Braves who wasn't Acuna himself that was trying to make a run at Urena. Urena should have been on the ground. There should have been punches thrown his way, or at the very least somebody executing the perfect bull charge to drive him to the ground. But in regards to this issue, there should be no issue with pitchers throwing inside. Pitchers need to command the inside part of the plate. Urena, the way he looked, the fact that he took the first pitch, his hardest fastball, and went to throw it at Acuna's back, looks bad, but he needs to control the inside part of the plate. He probably would have been better suited if he buzzed him, if he knocked him to the ground. But, his intentions were, I don't think they were bad. His execution was atrocious. It looked bad. It made him and the Marlins look bad. And you know what? He lost a lot of respect from players on the Atlanta Braves and a lot of other players in Major League Baseball for the way that he handled it. But he should take care of the inside part of the plate. And you know what? If I'm the Atlanta Braves, at some point during the rest of the season, Jose Urena is going to be on the mound for the Miami Marlins. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's the softest tossing lefty that exists in Major League Baseball. Urena needs to be hit. And if it results in a fight, it results in a fight. But you have to understand that there's some things that have some sort of repercussions. Jose Urena, for what he did and the way that he handled his situation, he deserves one in the back. And hopefully, when he takes his place in the batter's box, there's a Braves pitcher that's going to enact that type of revenge. But last thing I want to say about this, because it's going to kind of transition me into the last part of my show today. He got a 6-game suspension. Joe Torre is handling the on-field affairs in Major League Baseball, basically is the one that's making the decision that a player is going to sit and how many games he's going to be suspended for. You obviously got people in the media, you got fans who are up in arms saying, how is it that you, Joe Torre, can only give Jose Urena a 6-game suspension? And for that, I don't blame Joe Torre. For that, I don't blame Major League Baseball in the position that it's in. Because there has been precedents set for many, many years as far as suspensions that are related to on-field events and things that happen and altercations in Major League Baseball. Pitchers, for a long time, if you're a relief pitcher, you get suspended for the same 6 games, well, that's going to put your team in a little bit of a funk. You know, it's a reliever that you depend on. It isn't going to be in the game for the next 6 days. If you're an offensive everyday player, if you go out there and your job is to play whatever position you play on the field, and you're suspended for 5 or 6 games, that means that's 5 or 6 games that you're not going to be able to start. Well, if you're a starting pitcher, you essentially miss 1 start, or you have 1 start that's pushed back. Well, the precedence has been set in Major League Baseball for many, many years. That this is the suspension. This is what happens when a starting pitcher is involved in an altercation. So Joe Torre had nothing else to go by. If he was going to make an example of Jose Urena, saying that, you know, I don't know, what would his message have even been? Because Urena is trying to pitch inside. Now, his execution, he looked terrible. He really did. Throwing the first pitch of the game right at his back, you know, his hardest fastball, maybe one of the hardest fastballs he's ever thrown, his execution was terrible. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the penalty for doing what he did? It is probably deserved of some suspension. But what is it about what Jose Urena did that would make his suspension have to be a lot longer than any other starting pitcher that's involved in an altercation with another team in Major League Baseball? So, my suggestion, I don't know, Major League Baseball wants to do it. If they don't want to do it, to me, it doesn't really matter. You know, if they want to have a discussion about perhaps treating a starting pitcher a little bit tougher in regards to suspension for on-field altercations, because they're not necessarily getting the same penalty of that everyday position play. You know, if it's a starting pitcher and a position player that end up being involved in a brawl at a pitcher's mound or in front of a pitcher's mound, you know, that offensive player with their 5 or 6 game suspension is going to lose a lot more. Now, when it comes down to it, that player, no matter what player you are, what your position is, you're still facing the same amount of games suspended for. In other words, you're getting docked, 6 games worth of pay. So on that level, it's the same. But how many games are you actually missing? Now, if Major League Baseball wants to do something and perhaps set a precedent and say from this point forward, if it is a starting pitcher that's involved in an on-field altercation, set the minimum suspension at 10 games or the equivalent of 2 starts. And if you want to do that, I don't have an issue with that. But in the meantime, where it's set right now, the precedent hasn't been set for a starting pitcher to get suspended for any more games than they have before. So if you're Joe Torre, you're not doing anything wrong because you're essentially giving the penalty that has been given in past years. Now, if baseball wants to get together and figure out what the future suspension should be for a starting pitcher, then do it. And then at least you'll have something to go by. Joe Torre will have something to go by when he's making this decision over that next starting pitcher that, beats somebody in the back, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. You got hitters for years They've been getting more and more comfortable at the plate. And you know, baseball, just like any other sport that has fantasy implications, you want to see the hitters do well. So the game is continuing to be in the favor of the hitters, in the favor of the players that come up to bat and kind of knock towards the pitcher. So who has the control over that? It's that pitcher that's on the mound. And whether you want to do a Ryan Dern, wear your glasses and throw the ball to the backstop to make the hitters think you're a little crazy and you don't know where the ball's going, or you want to take matters in your own hands, you got somebody that's destroying you. And here's the other thing that I wanted to get into, because this is what I was thinking about before, and it kind of ticked me off. There's a part of the fan crowd, a part of the media crowd, that says, why do you got to hit him? Why do you got to hit a batter that's, owning you at the plate? Just get him out. And the thing that doesn't get brought up about this, and this is what kind of pisses me off, because, we look at things from such a biased standpoint. And you say, don't hit a batter that is dominating you at the plate, get him out. Well, part of getting him out is not necessarily throwing 3 strikes to him. For anybody that says just get him out, I don't know how many of you have actually played baseball. Because it's not about throwing 3 strikes if you're a pitcher. It's about commanding the strike zone, but also commanding outside of the strike zone. Commanding the outside corner, commanding the inside corner, making the hitter feel uncomfortable. And you know what? Sometimes there's going to be a purpose pitch involved. Sometimes there's going to be a hard fastball in that's going to knock a batter off the plate to set up a slider away. Or sometimes, if you think a hitter is got your message and is going to be leaning outside anyway, maybe throw another one inside. Part of getting 3 strikes and part of pitching in Major League Baseball, part of the ability to get a hitter out means not only controlling the strike zone, but controlling the inside part of the plate and the outside part of the plate, and throw pitches that aren't necessarily strikes. And if you got a hitter that is taking 10 minutes like David Ortiz did for his entire career, most notably against the New York Yankees, digging his feet into the batter's box, getting himself in a most comfortable position, and basically saying, listen, don't throw the ball inside, and the New York Yankees obliged by not throwing the ball inside, they deserve the results they get. They deserve the fact that David Ortiz hit better against the New York Yankees than any other team in Major League Baseball. Every now and then, he needs to be buzzed. He needs to be knocked off the plate. And I understand he's a big dude, and if he came out to the mound to fight you, he could probably cause some damage. But it's going to increase or enhance your ability to get the hitter out. And that's your goal as a pitcher. Your goal is to get the hitter out. Not in a way where a lot of people that don't know a lot about baseball are speaking, saying, hey, don't hit him, get him out. Part of getting him out, maybe the next time, may be to hit him. Because if you're a batter and you come in and you feel like this pitcher's going to throw you inside, you're thinking about it. You're not leaning over the plate. And you know what? If he throws a good fastball on the outside part of the plate, maybe that hitter is thinking that he is going to get one inside. It's part of the psychological advantages that good pitchers have. And good pitchers, once again, command the strike zone, but also command outside the strike zone. Command the inside part of the plate and the outside part of the plate. So for those that are saying, hey, just strike him out, that's part of striking him out. And maybe it isn't beneficial if you drill a guy in the back. But you know what? History of baseball has shown that sometimes that needs to happen. Now the best way to get Ronald Acuna out may be to pitch him inside more. It may be to do something different than what the other pitchers have done over the last 2 weeks. Because all they're doing is throwing balls over the plate and Ronald Acuna is killing them. You got to pitch him differently. And like I said, I'm not condoning drilling him. I'm not saying trying to hurt him. I'm not saying throw one in his back every time he comes to the plate. But the principle of what Jose Urena was doing was not necessarily bad. It was his execution that was terrible. And he looked bad for it. He's going to have to deal with not the consequences of his suspension, which once again is light, but the consequences of perhaps a lot of people in Major League Baseball losing respect for him for the way that he handled it. It looked like, hey, I can't get you out, so I'm just going to drill you in the back. And the one part of it that stands out that I will completely agree with the assessment. You're talking about a guy that's had leadoff home runs in 5 straight games, or home runs in his first official at bat in 5 games. So if you hit him, he doesn't continue that streak. I don't like that part of it. If you remember Tom Selleck's character in Mr. Baseball, he was going for a home run record. He had the last couple at bats where he's trying to hit a home run in his 8th straight game. And for those that don't know the movie, his manager was a longtime home run hitter, had hit home runs in 8 consecutive games. So the pitcher, rather than walk him, decided to hit him in the back.